The reason Medium has developed into what it is over the last year is that it has made the effort to use human curators to identify quality stories. I got accepted as a nominator fairly early on, and it's just a really sweet and supportive community, which is just unusual compared to everything else that's on the web, and I think Boost is largely responsible for why that is.
Medium has just reached 1 million paying members. On the buzzy publishing platform, substance is more important than attention. It is a platform for human writing with 110 human Boost nominators. Walter Rhein is one of these expert nominators who can nominate your story for a fat boost. He has 20 years of experience as an editor, journalist, blogger, and novelist. He has 10 years of experience as a certified teacher and 45,000 followers on Medium. Plus, he has his own column in the Writing Cooperative, one of the top 10 publications on Medium. Do you want to learn from a real Boost expert with high standards and expertise? Then Walter is your man. He devotes most of his time to writing and also is a caring family man. He has proof of work and he has a heap of experience in reading and reviewing. Plus, he's had tremendous growth not only on Medium but also on Substack, where he is growing rapidly. As I always say, it's not about either or, it's about and. Substack and Medium can be in one ecosystem. They are like peanut butter and jelly. They go together perfectly. Thank you so much for coming here and chatting with me today. I hope everything is fine on your end.
Yep, everything's perfect. Thanks for having me.
You are an author and a Medium writer and a Substack writer. Could you tell us a bit more about this, about your solopreneur life?
I've been a writer for about as long as I can remember, and I started off, I've had a couple books published with some small publications. And then throughout the years, I've had a variety of other jobs, a lot of them writing related. I think everybody who's done any sort of writing does spend some time teaching. So I've been a teacher and an editor and a translator. I had a small bike and ski shop for a while, so I got to learn a lot about marketing. But the common thread that runs through my life is sending out articles and trying to eke out any kind of additional income that way. And over the last 4 years, I've been fortunate enough to develop my following on Medium enough where that's become my primary income. I'm expanding lately into Substack a little more, but I'm still kind of in the experimentation phase there. But yep, as things are going, just happy to have the opportunities to write the things I'm interested or about the topics I'm interested in exploring.
Wow, that's super interesting. So did you start it then 4 years ago or started taking it seriously writing on Medium back then 4 years ago?
About 2020, I think, is when I really started taking Medium seriously. I actually spent about a year dabbling more with Vocal than I did with Medium because early on I came in third place in one of Vocal's writing contests. I think they paid me about $800 for coming in third place. So I had the impression it's like the Vocal. Initially, I had the impression Vocal was the better option between Vocal and Medium to make a regular income. But eventually, it's like if you're not winning the contest on Vocal, you're not going to make any money on there, or at least I wasn't. So I switched over and found more success with Medium.
Yeah, I know some writers from Medium who still write on Vocal and try to win in those competitions. But I think $800 or more for one story is huge for Vocal. But now with the new Boost Beta program, writers on Medium also have the chance to get instead of $10, $100, or instead of $20, $200. What do you think, Walter, about the Boost? Because you are also a Boost nommer. This is a huge thing. So how do you feel about this Boost? Maybe also compared to Vocal or to other platforms?
Oh, I think Boost is just a really wonderful program. I got accepted as a nominator fairly early on. I think it was March of last year. What it's really designed to do and what Medium really needs to be recognized for what they're doing is they're combating the proliferation of AI content on the web. On any platform you go to, and 5 years ago, the problem was all the comments. You'd publish something, you'd get just a bunch of really strange comments. And there's always this dynamic between, free speech, versus a certain amount of moderation. And what often gets left out of that debate is how every platform inherently has a certain amount of moderation. You're not allowed to threaten people. There's stuff that's prohibited. You're not allowed to indulge in hate speech. So already when people start talking about the need to protect free speech, it's already within this bubble of understanding. We can't have hate speech, we can't have threatening. But then we get this thing where you get these programmed AI false accounts just flooding the platform with information that's not accurate. And I think we see that a lot on social media sites. I mean, a lot of social media sites have become so toxic, you can't even spend time on that. People just get into fights. And Medium is one of the few platforms, I think it's by far the best platform where you get this really nice community. And the reason is they make a sincere effort to make sure you're engaging with real people and not, programmed bots that are designed to incite you into just a rage. But Boost is wonderful. It's the reason Medium has developed into what it is over the last year is that it has made the effort to use human curators to identify quality stories. And I mean, going back with me, I've worked with so many different platforms, and I've seen so many responses to my writing that I can have a pretty good sense now that some of the comments aren't coming from real people, and that just kind of translates over. You've been seeing it. I mean, the AI thing has only been an issue for the last year or so, but you've been seeing less developed versions of AI for going back 5 or 10 years. So it's just always appeared in your various articles. You get comments and you're like, this is clearly not from a human being. So you just kind of get a sense for that. Medium gives you the opportunity to engage with other people and share stories that are human stories and that are the things people want to hear. And it's just a really sweet and supportive community, which is just unusual compared to everything else that's on the web. And I think Boost as is largely responsible for why that is.
Yeah, I think so. And now being a Nomma is also, I think, a huge thing because you, for instance, can earn up to $900. How much time do you spend exploring all those voices on Medium and finding all those stories?
Yeah, I work full time as a writer, so it's just a typical 40-hour work week plus the other time you spend just fretting over ideas as you're out and about, which is, basically every other waking moment of your life. But when it comes to the Boost Nominator part, kind of flows as a natural extension out of what I do anyway. I'm an editor for Cultured and another publication called Write and Review. So I'm evaluating a lot of submissions. And then I just get a lot of messages. I always reach out. There's writers I reached out to, or if they submit something to me, I'll edit it. And I try to, if I'm like, I think this is close, but it's not quite where it needs to be in order to get accepted by the curators. And one point of misconception that was people are kind of figuring it out now, but not in the earlier stages, is as a nominator, I only can nominate a story. I don't ultimately get to decide whether it's boosted or not. So I have to fulfill requirements. So it is a job. It's not like I'm all powerful and I get to say what gets seen. I send in a suggestion of something I think is good, and then ultimately it's up to the curators to decide if it's right or not. I want to not waste the curator's time. I want to make sure that the things I submit, because I want to maintain my position as a nominator, it makes me kind of a demanding editor. And I hope, I haven't talked too much with the people that I've worked with. I hope they don't feel I'm too hard on them. But everything I say and the suggestions I make are because I think, well, this could be something that could, this could potentially get you disqualified. So let's get this fixed. And there'll be times that I hope that there's some give and take where I might suggest 5 things and the writer says, okay, I'll make 3 of those changes. I'm like, okay, then we'll send it off because I feel it's got a pretty good chance. And there have been times when those have been taken without implementing all the suggestions that I thought, and other times when they've been rejected. And so then you're back to the drawing board of speculating as to, what it was that you needed to do to fix the article to get in there. But it's a lot of work. It requires a lot of time spent reading, looking for good articles, developing relationships with writers, and editing.
Could you say like you spend like 30% on Medium in your position as a boost number, or is it more? I don't know.
Yeah, the percentage of that's actually what I'm doing looking for stories to nominate. It's kind of hard to tell. I'll write because most of my hours are probably the time I'm spending writing my own articles. But I would say it's at least maybe 2 hours a day, something like that for looking through I spend just a lot of time reading articles, and that's all part of what you have to do to succeed on Medium. It's all about developing your community, interacting with other writers, but a lot of it just overlaps, so it's just kind of hard to say that the time I'm spending is working both as in my capacity as a Boost nominator and in my capacity as a writer and in my capacity as an editor supporting other writers. So it all kinds of blends together.
And you, when you say you started in spring, then you were one of the first numbers, I think, on the
I
platform.
was in, I think, the second wave, but I think
Ah,
they started with a lot of their, I think, like Justin over at the Writing Cooperative.
yeah.
So they had kind of a couple of their big publications that they've, because prior to Boost, I think Medium did some sort of a sponsorship with some of the big publications. So they
Mm.
kind of moved on from that program and then into Boost. So naturally they would move into with to the publications that have been there since the beginning, in which they'd already established a relationship with. But I'm not like, I'm a newcomer compared to those people, even though I've been on Medium for about 4 years, but I was in the next kind of group.
Yeah, and how did you get this column in Justin Cox's
Ah, yeah.
publication?
That's actually pretty fun. It goes back to just the whole idea of the publications. When I first started out on Medium, one of the real attractions is, well, the whole idea of Medium is that it's one of the best platforms for somebody who doesn't have a following to get seen. Like on Substack, you have to develop your own subscriber list before your stories gets shown, but on Medium, they've got their internal distribution mechanism where if you write something that's quality, and it's always tough. You got to be seen. So if you're just publishing, you can publish on your own on Medium, so it'll be seen by a few people. But if you put it through a publication, this is a way of submitting your story to, and that's Justin. Justin would be the editor who would see it and then evaluate it and then decide whether he's going to put it in his publication, which now gives you visibility to, whatever the 100,000 or 200,000 people that follow the writing cooperative. So it's just pretty exciting. And there's just all these different mechanisms on Medium where you can get visibility. Boost is just one of them. So whether you're boosted or not, it is possible to have stories perform very well. And then the other one is, your follower count is important, but that just develops over time. Your email subscribers on Medium, that'll get you some views. And then the other one is just getting involved in these publications. So what happened was, as I just had been writing with, I'd been submitting regular to the Writing Cooperative, had some success with some stories, and they just identified me because I think a column spot opened up, and so they just offered me the column. But I'd been working and submitting them stories for about a year before that happened.
What was your goal when you started on Medium? Was it to like promote your books, or was it because you wanted to be seen as a writer?
Yeah, I've had a certain amount of my income has come from writing going back for 25 years. And I'm just always interested in placing articles. I mean, I started out long enough ago where I was, typing out articles and putting them into a letter and sending them off and waiting 6 months to get a reply. And so now it's kind of funny because I know a lot of some writers kind of complain that they'll submit something to a publication on Medium and it takes 2 or 3 days to get a response. And so they pull it. And it's just like, well, I'm coming from a perspective of we used to have to wait for 6 months to a year. So it seems like, waiting 2 or 3 days is fine for me. And you just got to balance that with the benefits of, it's like if you pull it out too early, there's a chance the Boost nominator who works at that publication is not going to read your story now because he pulled it out. And I can't emphasize enough that you have to wait that 2 or 3 days to let that person evaluate that to give your story the best chance of either getting in the publication or getting boosted. But yeah, I just always, for 25 years, I've been on the lookout for markets where I could submit my writing and make a little bit of extra money from it. And Medium has been just fantastic. And what's really great about Medium is it allows you to write about the things that are important to you, the themes that you want to, as opposed to writing a prompt or, doing some sort of contracted work, which is fine. And I've done plenty of that too. But I just appreciate having this platform or this place on the internet where I can write about the stories that are most important to me.
And how many books did you publish until now?
Gosh, I can't remember exactly now. It's been like 4 or 5. I worked with a small press called Romalda, and then I worked with Perseid Press with a couple books with them. I think I have 3 books with Perseid Press, and I had 2 with Romalda. Oh, so there's more. And then I co-authored a book that was taken by Burning Bulb Publication. Perseid Press of all those is probably the most prestigious. It's run by Janet Morris. She's fairly well known in the science fiction community. She did the Thieves World books with Baen books back in the 70s. But these are all just pretty small presses that don't really have the marketing capacity, of the major publishers. And these days, it's just getting harder and harder since it went from big five to big four to big three. They keep just absorbing and getting smaller and smaller. So it's just really hard to do anything writing books. And I think it's long been stated that your best strategy, if you want to develop a writing career, is just develop your own following using the various platforms that are available. And I think Medium is just one of the main cornerstones in that kind of idea. So that's what's led me to here.
So you would recommend Medium then to authors and indie authors?
Without question. I don't see, like, the way the market is today, I don't think anybody who's a writer can afford to not be on Medium. And I didn't even realize how some lines of thoughts I'd kind of conditioned myself not even to engage because you just had the understanding there was no market for that. Well, then you get on Medium, and when you start working with that community, you do see there's quite a few people that are interested in exploring a lot of ideas that are not widely explored in the media. And so there's plenty of room for a lot of different ideas on Medium, and it's really great.
And do you think it makes a difference if you have this verified author badge on Medium?
One of the things I'm working to do on Medium and the first thing I did when I signed up on the platform is I started independent a publication to review independently published books. And so I've been kind of overwhelmed with submissions from publicists, but I'm trying to get where I'm going to go through and be more deliberate about reviewing the books of Medium authors with their verified book tag. I just think it's one of those things where this is something I love that Medium has that, and they emphasize, or they allow writers the ability to get some visibility and say, hey, I've written a book. But what we do is we have to change the culture where people are just more inclined to actually go and buy those books and read them and review them. So one of the things I'm trying to do is, and I've been trying to do since I've been on Medium, is just review more of those books. But it just takes a little bit of time, and it's hard to get it going. I don't know if I've necessarily seen an uptick in followers because of that, but it's something that I appreciate that they have. And I think it's going to be, a bigger thing and a bigger emphasis of mine going forward.
Hey, it's Kristina. Do you want to learn more about writing on Medium? Then my Medium school, included in the online writing school, is for you. Just become a paid member for my newsletter and get access to my community. You can find the link in the show box below. This is what Sarah Fay from Writers at Work from Substack shared with me. She said that usually it's not you launch a book and then it sells for 3 years or so. Usually it's you pre-launch it, you launch it, and then there is a spike and then it goes down again. And Substack is a way for authors to really start a movement and keep people talking about your book and your topic and so on. And I love this idea. And I thought somehow this would also be the idea of Medium. But of course, Medium is about like reading all those stories. And so I think on Substack is more like focused on really authors and helping those authors be seen.
The concept of marketing a book is just a hard topic anyway. Sometimes I've seen a lot of these articles that people write about how they make a huge amount of money on their self-published books, but then they're publishing things like notebooks, I mean, so it's like, or they're doing like adult coloring books.
Coloring
and
books,
they have like 300
now with AI, but it's very, very easy. Yeah.
Well, so then they have 300 titles, and so then all that kind of gets mixed in. I mean, if you've just got a work of fiction, when I say the word book now means all kinds of different things. So when somebody says book, I'm thinking of, like the Lord of the Rings or something like that. It's like, well, getting any kind of momentum for some kind of just sort of a story is really hard to do. So I don't even think about book marketing all that much anymore. It's sort of like having written the book is good and it's a valuable thing, but you just set it off to the side, and I just focus on. I think if you're writing an article just to promote a book, it's probably not going to succeed. So you want to write a good article that succeeds on its own and hope that through that article, people generate enough interest in you to go and look out for the book on their own.
And I know that you also offer other writers to help them get boosted. Could you share a bit more about this?
I enjoy working on Substack just as a way of recruiting authors. There's the writers that submit to my various publications, then I'm on the lookout for writers on Medium who use generally the racism tag or the Black Lives Matter tag. I'll read those stories. So I'm evaluating some of those stories for Boost. But Boost is kind of changing. It used to be that we would kind of pick stories from everywhere and from self-published and smaller pubs, but now you don't want to poach boosts from other publications anymore. So I'm I'm being more proactive and finding writers that I think have a good story to tell that don't necessarily understand the resources that are available on Medium for them. So that's part of the reason why I've been doing my Substack. And I'm trying to just explain to people what the format for the story is that tends to succeed on Medium, just because I find myself repeating it on the things that are submitted to my page or to my publication. I think there's just value in saying, this is what works on Medium, this is what Medium's looking for, just so people go in with the right expectations for how they can make Medium succeed. And I'll provide the guidance that I can and assure them that if they submit to my publication, they'll at least get some eyes on it that'll give them the best chance of getting a wider audience to see it.
So this means if I would submit a piece to your publications, then I would get feedback from you.
A lot of writers, what I prefer even above that though, is when we make a personal connection where people contact me directly through email and send me a Google Doc, because the editing functionality of Medium isn't the best. And I really do like to get into it and I like to do like a track changes where people can see. It's just easier for me rather than putting like a little comment over the corner and saying, this needs to be changed. I like to just delete whole things so people can see what's deleted and then type in maybe a suggestion. But I like everything to be very visual so they know everything that was done. And I think going through the editing process is the best way to just improve your craft. I learned this when I worked with Janet Morris on one of my books. She sent me back, the file, and it's just covered, and you just go through meticulous through every one of those suggestions and changes. And the expectation is always, you don't have to just do what I tell you. It's like I'm saying, this is an area that needs to be addressed. You have to do something. Here's a suggestion, but it's still the author retains ownership and they can make the changes they feel is right. But this whole process is, it takes a lot of work, and I find it useful. And the writers that I work with, they tend to get much better. So then they know what my expectations are. They know what I'm looking for, and helps them guide them to pick the topics they want to write about. And you just become much more efficient. You see a greater percentage of your articles get boosted, and greater percentage accepted publication. So it just works for everybody.
Tech always used to be a big thing on Medium, but now it's even bigger, because there are so many tech publications that are blossoming and flourishing again. This is awesome. Do you also see this like more tech focus on the platform?
I know what you're talking about, but I mean, my blinders are kind of on, so I'm in my little area. But one of the beautiful things about Medium is, yes, they have the opportunity for a variety of smaller communities within Medium. So you can go on that. I know that tech has been popular, but I almost never read any stories about tech on Medium because the people I follow and the publications I follow, that's not our area of focus. But there's plenty of places. You just have to go to the another corner of Medium and find something that's a place for you. And I think that's just Medium spends a lot of time promoting the stories that people want to read. I mean, there's obviously a lot of interest in reading about tech, but there's a lot of interest in reading about more human-centered topics, and Medium definitely gives them a lot of visibility.
What do you recommend new writers in regard to get boosted, or in general to format their stories on Medium?
I think the biggest thing to do is just kind of establish or find the communities on Medium that most interest you, find the publications that not only are covering the topics you want, but are covering the topics you want in a way that feels right to you. I work with a lot of different ones, and you don't have to really worry about the size of the publication either. I mean, you got something like the Writers Cooperative, which is a really good starting point for people, but it's just huge, So they're just not at a place where they can give you a lot of feedback on your articles. If you find a smaller publications like some of the ones that I run, we get fewer submissions, so we are able to spend more time kind of developing these writers. And then if it's on topics that aren't like the major topics that are, you can just get more feedback in doing that. But I like the procedure of like any platform. You can spend your first month or two just kind of experimenting. I think in my second month on Medium, I wrote like 70 stories. It's just like, sending them out to all different places just to see what kind of the reaction you get. but you just do it. You have to get your hands dirty with it. And then after a while, it just through a natural course, you'll start to develop some relationship. You have to be open to developing these relationships. And I think what really works is finding the editors that establishing relationships with the editors that have the power to boost your stories, getting an idea what kind of stories they're looking for. So you're writing specifically for them. And then you just get it just helps to raise your chances of getting featured in a publication and getting the most visibility for your story.
What is important for new writers if they want to write a story that could also be boost-worthy, just in regard to the format? And then maybe we can also talk about what are the do's and the don'ts in regard to get boosted.
Well, I think, yeah, that's a wonderful thing to point out. The submission guidelines on the Writing Cooperative, Justin, he does a really, really good job, and he keeps updating his document there, so it's just not even worth. I mean, I was going to write one for my little publication. I just put a link to Justin's page because his is so good. But it's just like the idea of what is common practice on Medium, what the platform is tends to look for. Just with the title with in the big T format, then the subtitle in little T format, and featured image, how to use your headers. All the formatting needs to be right, because if it doesn't look like a Medium piece, it's not likely to be boosted. And it's one of those things where I do it just kind of as second nature now. And so then I sometimes have to be mindful that if I get a submission from a new writer and it's just not how it's supposed to look, it's like, okay, just remember that people haven't been working with this for a while. I spent my first month or so, and I sent a lot of stories, three or four stories into the Writing Cooperative before they finally took one. They had a different editor at the time, and she would just write, it's like, rejected because, and then she'd just leave like a little line that you had to go and reference in their submission guidelines. So I kept doing that over and over until I understood what they meant. Getting into what you asked about boost. Boost is a good boost story starts out with you need to have a really good title, an optimized title. You can't just put, something I saw walking the dog. That can't be your title. It has to be the topic and everything, like a SEO optimized title that the internet can pick up and distribute for you. And you need a good featured image.
Yeah,
but it's always
can I interrupt you a sec? So this
Yep.
really does this has to be an SEO optimized title then.
Maybe that's not the right way to talk about it, but I've been using a couple different headline analyzers, and sometimes what they spit out to me, it looks like kind of a word salad. But I find that when I use a title that's been approved by some headline analyzer, and I don't generate them, I use through the process of a trial and error to get a title that I can live with that is supposedly optimized. But I tend to see that I get a better result on my or a better response from my articles when it's got what's considered a good title, whether or not it's boosted. So you'll get more views on it. It just seems like but this is the tech side of things, and the tech guys could answer this better than I can. I'm just going entirely by my speculation based on what seems to work for me. And if I'm a believer in using a title that's not necessarily literature. I did an article on that for the Writing Cooperative too, how the title fits in that space between programming and writing. You don't get to own the title anymore as a writer. You have to do this thing that allows it to be found. It's like the doorway that drives readers through the portal to get to your article. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily look beautiful or poetic anymore, but it serves a purpose from a programming side that's just magic to me.
And which headline analyzer do you use then?
I use CoSchedule.
Do you have another recommendation in regard to SEO for beginners, so on a very low level?
Oh, I'm definitely not an expert on it. I just try to do the minimum so my story just doesn't get buried. I think one important consideration is the SEO optimization, I think, might drive more non-members to your story, and I'm more focused on getting Medium members to read my story. Most of my process that I use now is just something I put in like 3 months ago when I went through a period. I didn't get any boosts for a long time, and I'm like, well, maybe it's the titles. And so I just put my focus as I'm always speculating on what it is. Every time I write a story, you always have to evaluate whether it succeeds or fails, and then just come up with some sort of reason. And it's easy to be frustrated. You write a story and you're frustrated because it doesn't do as well as you think. So rather than sit and be frustrated about it, I always try and speculate on what I can do differently on my next story to get a different result. And that just helps kind of transform that negative energy into something positive. And so one of the most productive things I did was three months ago when I'm like, well, I'm going to make more of an effort to do these titles that seem to be optimized using this magic that I don't fully understand. And since I've been using, just better scoring or better performing titles, I've had better results. So
Cool. That's a nice insight. And you also shared on Substack, on your Substack publication, Walter, that I think in March was an amazing month for you, as far as I know, because so many stories of you got boosted and also you helped so many people get boosted. But was this like your best month ever then in March in regard to boosted stories?
yeah, I think I had about, what was it, 12 of 18 or
Mm-hmm.
something were boosted in March. And so but it's just come from refining this process of finding the right story for the right publication and getting to know the editors. And it's just after a year of doing this where you're, talking with different editors and seeing what they want and seeing what best practices are. And I also find though too, you just have to stay on your toes with Medium where you have to kind of adapt every single month. Things seem to change a little bit. And there's just always going to be, a flood of articles about, oh, everything's different now and people are upset. But I kind of appreciate that constant challenge where I generally believe Medium is always trying to do better and present a better product. So, we refine our process and hopefully we produce better stories. And I've been pleased with how mine have performed.
Cool. And in regard to your boost ratio, let's call it like this, how many stories you nominate get boosted per month? Can you share like an average?
That can vary wildly. I've had some where I've come in at about 60%, and sometimes I've been at over 90%. So that kind of changes too. And I don't know exactly why it would change but some part of might be that it's not my perception because it's like I always think my stories are a consistent level, but then, so you'll submit them and write them, but then sometimes you read a story 2 weeks later and it's like, well, that's not nearly as good as these other ones. So sometimes you're fatigued. So your perception is just kind of, it's always in motion. And I think that's one of the things that I think is the cause of frustration with Boost. Because what we have is you have that human element, and the human element is what's making the decisions, but humans have different opinions. So instead of, a single point, you have this kind of range that you have to hit. And then if you just don't overlap with a curator on something, maybe it'll be not taken where another curator would have taken it. And you just can't focus on that. You have to focus on maintaining your process, doing the best possible work. And you're just looking for this trend where, if over half of them are getting accepted that should be, then, you're doing good.
What do you think about this like volume thing versus quality, or do you think it's something you have to combine?
Well, I know that Boost definitely has changed my approach to Medium. Prior to Boost, I was doing probably 25 to 30 stories per month. And since Boost, it's been usually under 20, usually 18, 20, something like that. And I take a different approach. And it's exactly as the program is designed to work, where I'm going through an extra round of edits. Because now it's just critical. You have to hit that narrative sweet spot where you engage readers and then offer something good. And I like that challenge, but usually by Friday I'm pretty fatigued, but I am a full-time writer, so I do have the time to do this. And I've also been doing it for a long time. I worked from 2017 to 2020. And like I said before, I've always, throughout my whole professional life, I've been sending off articles and stories. But from 2017 to 2020, I was working as a content writer. So I was just cranking out thousands and thousands of words a day. And I think, and then I was also a transcriber for a while. So you're just really fast. Transcribing is a useful thing for a writer to do for at least a little bit of time because it teaches you how to write dialogue accurately and quickly and get your copy down fast. So I can produce a lot of writing. I can produce a lot more than somebody who's just a casual writer. And then in addition to all the other work I do on Substack and Medium, I 3 days a week I'm always writing a book for my kids. We sit together and read this book. So that's another 2,000 words, three days a week. So that's so I put down a lot of words, and it's just yeah. And then I do the art stuff just because that's kind of that just allows me to put the screen aside for a minute and kind of recharge my brain. So even though it's separate from writing, it also helps me kind of recharge so then I can get back to my screen afterwards. So you have these kind of like overlapping things that just kind of add to your process that allow you to get a lot more done. And then on top of all that, I try to do at least a 10-minute nap at about
On
2:30.
your keyboard or so like this.
Yeah, no, no, but usually I have to pick up my daughter from school at 2:30. So I usually just try to sit on the couch at 2:20 and then my alarm goes off. So I try
Yeah.
to get that 10 minutes makes all the difference. And then I can do another article when I bring her back home.
Writing the whole day is pretty exhausting. And I know that in our community, you shared that you are like working sometimes like 16 hours per day. And I was
Yeah.
like, what, really? 16 hours? And then you
Well,
said, well, but at 10 o'clock I go to sleep. And I was like, okay. And I told Patrick about it. He was like, what?
well, the writing life is like that, where every time you get a good idea, you have to sit down
Yeah.
and send it off the note. And it's just like, even there'll be times when I'll be sitting there and then I'll just kind of zone out and I'll be like, okay, I'll have like a paragraph composed. Then you just have to find time to sit and write it down. Part of adopting your good process is just knowing when you have to push away from your computer every now and then, and you have to not beat yourself up too hard. Because just there's this, I don't know if you know the theory of like the blue light. I don't know. You have to get away from the light that comes out of your computer and just.
Yeah, of
I'll
course.
take the dog for a walk, and there'll be times when I'll be sitting at my computer and the writing just isn't coming quite right. Normally it should come out. There's a certain rate that it should come out, and I know things are okay. And if it's not coming out the way it should, I'll just push away. And then in through the act of walking the dog, you can compose the thing. You find the answer that was stuffing you up. And then the second you come back, even if it's just 10 minutes later, zoom, then you write it.
What I love is that if you are a full-time creator, whatever you do can be a story, you know, you're
Oh yeah.
experiencing something and or you're talking to someone and then you're, oh, okay, this would be nice for a story.
I tell that a lot to people because they'll tell me a story like that. And I'm like, well, that what you just told me is the beginning. That's like the personal
Yeah.
narrative component of a boost story. That's like it's exactly what they're looking for. And those the lead is the old word from journalism,
Yeah.
like just the thing that grab or the hook. You put a thing in there that's very relatable and that everybody in their life, as they're scrolling through the internet, they're looking for something that just captures them. And then from there you move on to the other elements of a boostable story. But it always for me, it always starts with a good personal anecdote at the beginning that's relatable and it somehow will tie into what you want to say, the more important thing you want to say.
And other boost numbers, they told me that it's so important. Of course, you can go with this lead, but then you have to give like a little summary of your story. Do you also agree with this, or do you say you don't need a summary?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be bullet points. I don't think I think bullet I work in more like in, that writing area and like the racism and cultural type thing. So I'm not in I think the bullet points are more appropriate for like the tech area and the entrepreneurial area. Depending on what your topic is, there's different expectations for a boostable story, but there needs to be a good takeaway at the end. But I tend to focus on just like a really nice poetic final line, something that's kind of impactful. Just one of those things that you end the story on a bang where people see that and go, oh, that's good. It's all summed up in like one quick line that's something people can remember. Yeah, but that's all kind of related. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, and it could be appropriate to do it in a list of bullet points too.
Hey, it's Kristina. Do you want to start writing on Medium and kickstart your writing journey there? Want to learn how to format your stories and also get boosted? Then my online writing school with the Medium School is for you. You will learn how to set up your account, how to write online, how to tag your stories so that more people will see it, and get paid to share your stories, no matter how messy they are. Want to join? Then become a paid member. Link in the show notes below. Talking about Substack again and what you're doing there, and you said that you are seeing already great growth on the platform. You shared guest posts on my Substack, and you said that about 50, you gained 50
Yeah.
subscribers that day.
Mhm.
Could you share a
Mhm.
bit more about this?
I think that one, yeah, that people seem to find you through those guest posts, and it's just, I think that's neat. It's just the overlapping of audience and having people, through another trusted voice saying this is somebody you might be interested in. But I've been seeing so much, and since then, the notes, and I think notes is really interesting because I've used Twitter in the past, but I just never get any response. And some of these platforms are kind of odd because I know you'll write something on Facebook or whatever, and like nobody will respond to it, or Twitter, but then I'll take the same idea and expand it into an article on Medium, and you get 5,000 claps for it or something. So something just strange is going on. They talk about things like the shadow bans, and it's like, who knows what that is, but there's just, for some reason, there's platforms where I have absolutely no traction at all. And what I'm finding on notes is I'm just seeing huge amount of response. And I was a little leery about going into Substack at first because there was some controversy about some of the content that was allowed on Substack. So I've been just kind of doing my notes to kind of provoke people so that you can like the people that are going to not, that are ideologically opposed to the things I believe in will find me so then I just block them and they're gone. So I just think, a lot of people adopt this idea of don't engage controversial topics, but I think it's better to go the opposite direction where you speak openly what you believe, and then if people are discourteous in how they disagree with you, then you just get rid of them, and then everything goes on from there. But I'm seeing, so I've just been going on notes, and I get a lot of ideas throughout the day, and it's kind of neat to see what things are of interest to people. So you just kind of post just kind of one line, see how people respond. And then if it just kind of dies on the vine, you're like, well, okay, people aren't interested. But if you have one that gets, 5,000 likes, then maybe you want to consider writing an article on that topic for that platform. It's just sort of kind of a way to test the waters before you waste your time writing the article on something that people aren't really interested in reading.
Yeah, and there's also now in Notes this possibility to share videos. Do you also want to tap into this
Oof.
potential?
I haven't tried that yet. It's all just still so new though. I'll kind of wait. I've got enough that I have to kind of process now before I take on new things. But these things, 2 weeks from now, I might think totally differently. So we'll just kind of see.
How do you think about this whole follower thing? So many people complain about this on Substack and say, well, I don't want to gain followers. I want to gain subscribers. How do you see this?
Are the followers the ones who are seeing your notes? Is that how
Mhm.
that works?
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess you want the followers so that they see your notes, and then you can gain the data for what you should write your articles about to both meet the needs of the people that are subscribing and also hopefully expand your following. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how it parallels the stuff on Medium, but there's nothing on Medium that's similar to Notes.
And does this turns you off a bit that it's a social media network inside Substack?
No, it doesn't turn me off at all. I think that's kind of interesting. I Somebody mentioned the other day, it's like he said he was upset that Medium doesn't have the direct messages, but I don't really use the direct messages much on Substack either, except to block the weird ones that come in. So, but it's still one of those things. They have their advantages and their disadvantages, and I'm sure that Notes 2 months from now will not be what it is right now. These things always kind of change, but you'd always just got to keep trying experimenting with what's available. It doesn't do much good to be frustrated with the way things aren't. You have to see what you can get out of the way things currently are and understand that it's going to change. So,
What were like the best performing notes then on notes, the best performing posts on notes you shared? You were talking about like
mhm.
5,000 likes. Did you have one with 5,000 likes or
I think
1,000
that
likes?
one's up to. I just wrote one because there's this. Well, right now there's the issue with Trump is on trial, and so we also have, and this ties into my writing on just social injustice. We have an issue in the United States where you get your right to vote. Felons don't have the right to vote, or it's restricted, or they can, depends on the state, but sometimes they can appeal to have that restored. Anyway, Trump is facing criminal charges right now. So if he's a convicted felon, he can run for president, but then most convicted felons aren't allowed to vote. So that's what I put. I'm like, if a convicted felon can run for president, convicted felons should be able to vote. So that's what I posted, and that's the one that's been getting like 5,000 likes and all kinds of shares. But I think it's just these topics. I don't know. I guess what's the question there? It's one of these issues that kind of peels back some of the injustices. There's a lot of injustices in plain sight of the United States, wrapped up in the patriotism that we're kind of uh, conditioned. I've spent time abroad, so I have a better awareness than most Americans do of how Americans are perceived elsewhere. It's one of those things where too often in the United States, anything that is anything they suggest as a constructive criticism for how we can improve our society is taken as you being anti-patriotic, as if it can only be one thing or the other, which gets really frustrating. So when you find these things that are these obvious contradictions, like a convicted felon being allowed to run for president but not being allowed to vote for that office, I mean, that's just absurd. And I think that hits a nerve that a lot of the American public feels, but they don't feel empowered to comment on.
Walter, I asked you whether you want to change the focus on your publication then, based on the feedback you get for your notes post.
I appreciate the opportunity to do some more political commentary. We'll see how it goes. I might because I have quite a few articles and I've been kind of repurposing some of my articles from Medium onto Substack. And I've been just kind of starting, and it's sort of what I did when I first began with Medium. I was trying a lot of different articles to see what the reaction was. So that's basically what I've been doing with Substack too. So I might try because that I might try bringing in some of my posts that were popular from 2 or 3 years ago on Medium, more politically oriented ones, and see what kind of response I get if I discuss them on Substack. We'll see. I want to maintain a focus of talking about or giving advice on how to succeed on Medium, because that's still my primary focus right now, and help to develop writers share their voices on Medium. Because there's a lot of stories out there I know that just are not seen. I mean, our whole publishing industry, there's a lot of very compelling, very important stories that just do not get the attention they deserve. And for me, that's the primary focus, is helping people that have these impactful stories that represent the truth of our society get eyeballs on them. So I want to use Substack to develop those kind of writers and give them that platform. But yeah, I'll probably spread out and do a little bit more politically motivated writing too on Substack soon.
Another thing in regard to Substack is, when did you start? With how many subscribers or followers did you start? And where are you now, so that people can see like this transformation?
I think what it was about a year ago, I think, but I've just been passively, I mean, not very seriously doing anything with Substack, and I just turned it on, and I just did an announcement on Medium. I didn't import my followers from Medium. I just announced on Medium that I'm doing this Substack, and it's just sort of a way where some of the writers that approach me through my publications, I want to give them another avenue to interact with me, and just where I can, because Medium doesn't like you to write your craft of writing on Medium, and it makes a certain amount of sense. They want the personal stories to be on Medium, so I'm like, but I do enjoy writing my stories about how to succeed on Medium. So I'm like, okay, I'll just put them on Substack, and then through Substack, I'll be able to drive more people to Medium. So I've just been doing that kind of passively for a year, and I think up to like in the full first year, I got up to only about 90 subscribers. But then since I started up with your writing school and started experimenting with notes, it's up to over 700 now, but just in like the last month or like month and a half. So it's really there's been an explosion. And part of that is just on me, like because I was kind of passively just playing around with it. And so it's like nothing much happens because you're just doing the same thing, and then you notice something. It's like, okay, now it's getting more of my attention. So then once it starts getting your attention, then it starts to explode. So it's a combination of all those things, but certainly your writing school has helped a huge amount.
How do you see this, like Substack versus Medium Slackfest? Because you are on both platforms.
I don't see any need for it to be a versus. And in a lot of ways, they're so similar. You got followers, you got subscribers, you got a huge built-in audience. I mean, Medium has the advantage of their publications and their specific communities. But then Substack, you're kind of allowed to write on your own a little bit more. So there's just benefits. And a lot of it depends on, I don't have the same, when I get up and write every day, it's like sometimes it's, okay, this is a Medium article, this would be better on Substack. It's just what you got the energy for. So they complement each other very well. It's sort of like if you're training for a triathlon, you got to ride your bike and you got to run. And there's days when you feel, and you can jump off your bike and be tired from riding your bike, but you can then go do a run because it uses different muscle groups. And I think we have those same creative muscle groups. So it's just a way to be more efficient with the creative energy that you have during your work week. But I appreciate it. I like the opportunity to be able to use Substack to talk about Medium. And I mean, there's interest in that. And a lot of people just like this whole concept of how they can be a, entrepreneur, or how they can have a writing career. There's just all these different bricks that go into the foundation of the structure you're trying to build, and Medium and Substacks are both part of them. So yeah, using them together to make both of them better. Medium is very clear about they're moving towards a model where this is a place for your personal stories, not necessarily you're going to make a full-time income on Medium. So Medium encourages this, that you are working with multiple platforms, and it helps Medium because it draws in more users so that, it's for the best for everybody, I think.
Yeah, and if you say that you're a full-time creator on Medium, would you mind sharing what this means?
Well, I'm a full-time creator. Medium is probably the primary place for me, but I have income from a lot of different avenues. So, I mean, what I all I shoot for with Medium and talking about it like your earnings, I just try to I'm pretty happy if I get a story that makes $200. That's kind of what I'm looking at. And then it's kind of up to me to how many articles you put in, and there'll be some that'll be, 10, and then that'll make me $10, and then there'll be some articles that'll make you a couple thousand. But it just varies. And that's part of I always say that writing is a revenue insecure profession. You just never know. So I think part of writing is you just have to find places where you have some stable income. And I mean, I'm fortunate where I have a wife she's an educator. So we got our healthcare and everything through her. So that allows me a certain amount of flexibility because the pressure's not quite on where, you have to worry about, paying rent or, well, some of the necessities of life are taken care of by what she does with that stable side of thing. And I think that's, finding out one way or another to get that in there, whether it's through taking a part-time job or you have a stable income, all these things are just necessary for writing. And it's only by kind of eliminating all that anxiety of making sure your basic needs are met that you're able to really kind of blossom and do the most lucrative creative work.
And now, Walter, for all those people who fall in love with you, I'd like to know some personal things about you. For instance, you told me about your two daughters,
Mm-hmm.
and you told me about their soccer play or soccer game.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also play soccer with them then in the garden or somewhere else?
Oh, absolutely. And I participate in the coaching, both with soccer, and my youngest daughter also plays basketball. So it's one of those things where I enjoy. That's one of my main breaks during the week is when she gets her soccer practice, I'm always there. My older daughter doesn't like me to be at the practices as much, but I'm always there trying to help out on the teams, and I'll get in with them and play. And we regularly do where I got a couple pop-up nets, so we go play with as a family in the park to practice things. And that's just part of they grow up way too fast. So, and part of the reason it flies by so fast is because people drop off their kids at soccer practice and go somewhere else. And it's just, I need a break in the day anyway to stop thinking about things. So that hour and a half at soccer practice that's a joy.
And I know that another joy for you are dogs. Am I
Yeah.
right? So you have a
Yeah.
dog. You
Yeah.
are a dog person. Some say there are
Yeah.
cat people and dog
Suko, come here.
person.
I'll see if he'll come. Suko,
Ooh,
Suko. I saw he was asleep.
Suko. Yeah.
Yeah, his name is Suko. He came with the name.
And what does Suko mean?
He's a shelter dog.
Uh-huh.
We got him from the shelter, and he just had that name when we were there. I guess he's a character from hey, Suko, come here. He's a character from the last Airbender. There he is. Come here. Can you see him? No, he's not.
Suko. I can see it.
There he is.
Ah, hi, Suko. Oh, wonderful. And how old is Suko?
He's 3.
3 years old. Oh,
Yeah,
wonderful.
he started out this big, so
I see. So he's your sunshine manager then, the
yeah,
family.
he's a good boy.
And talking about your background, Walter, because I have to talk about the background. So what I see there is like,
Yeah.
where are you? Is this like, I don't know, a garage or where are you?
No,
Right now.
I've just got my exercise bike in here, and over there's my art stuff. These are my art supplies for my
I
pictures.
see.
Everything's just yeah, everything's all there. And I got my treadmills over there. Yeah, there's my bike.
And your wife coming from Peru, do you also travel with your kids to Peru then to meet the family?
Yeah, we've tried to, because I work from home and she's an educator, so she gets the summers off. So we try to get down there. I've got a trip planned for this summer for a couple weeks. It also helps the kids stay fluent with their Spanish.
Wow, that's wonderful. So this means that
Mhm.
you also speak Spanish fluently then.
Yep. Hmm.
And back then when you met her, then you were like meeting and talking in Spanish.
Yes, we in my household we always speak Spanish.
Really? The whole
Yep.
day?
Yep.
Not bilingual, it's Spanish.
Yeah. We
But your
speak
kids can
well.
also speak in English.
The kids all, yeah, well, the kids are pushing it lately because they like to speak in English more, and I think that's just the influence of the culture. But I try to always speak to my wife and kids in Spanish.
I see. But they can speak in English as well.
Yes, they're fluent. I mean, they get so much English from TV and from school that they're English dominant. But I think it's really important. Sometimes I make them watch Disney in Spanish instead of in English when it feels like they're getting a little bit too heavy on the English. But it's not. But the benefit is these trips to South America in the summer where they get to speak with their grandparents in Spanish, and that really fixes it in their brain a little bit better.
And what do you think is like the biggest difference between Peru and America?
Well, for my wife, it would have been the climate, and I wrote a couple articles about that. The poor thing, because you know, Peru never gets, about the coldest it ever gets there is jean jacket weather, and then we moved up to northern Wisconsin where we'll get 25, 30 degrees below zero. And one of the things that was hardest for her when she first moved here was just the winter sun and how low the sun gets in the sky, which was disconcerting. It's because if you really get the sense you're on a different planet, then if you can, one of the things you expect in life will always be the same as the sun. So then you go way up north and the sun's way never gets higher than this. And that was upsetting to her in that first year, but she's gotten used to it since then.
Wonderful, Walter. I think the whole interview was wonderful and it was delightful. And now, if people fall in love with you and your writing, how can they connect with you? What's the best way?
Oh gosh, I mean the Substack is a great way to do it, and then finding me on Medium is perfect too. Those are the main places, and I'm happy to look at drafts. I like to help people share their stories.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Walter, for the interview.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
I bet you liked my interview with Walter. For more videos, stay tuned, subscribe to my channel, and I see you in the next video. Bye bye.